Welcome to the Gut Show. I'm Erin Judge, registered dietitian and founder of Gutivate, and I will be your host. My goal on this side of the internet is to empower those with IBS and digestive disorders to understand their guts better, to have a healthier relationship with their bodies, and make confident choices to improve their digestive health. During this season of the Gut Show, you can expect a weekly conversation covering a hot topic related to health, digestion, and IBS. As a disclaimer, I am a dietitian, but I'm not your personal dietitian. Everything we cover in this episode is meant to be educational and not a substitute for personalized care from your healthcare team. Welcome, and let's dive into today's episode. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to share a really cool and exciting and free opportunity with you, and that is the IBS Warrior Summit. This is an annual event that we host every April for IBS Awareness Month, and the entire goal of the summit is to give back to those with IBS so that you can feel more empowered in your care and more confident in your body. This is a month-long webinar series that's going to happen throughout the month of April that will give you tools for navigating treatment options, working with your providers to get more successful treatment options and more successful plans of care, dealing with anxiety and developing a self-compassion practice, working through body image issues and body dysmorphia, and then supporting your gut motility. You'll also have access to a live Q&A with myself, Erin Judge, lead dietitian here at Gutivate, and you'll have movement sessions with me throughout so that you can move your body and learn how to connect to your body through movement in a way that will work well for your gut. Your complimentary ticket to the summit includes access to all live workshops in April, but also includes all recordings. So if you can't make it live to any of the events, or maybe you're going to miss a couple due to travel or the time zone difference, then you can still get access to them by signing up. So what are you waiting for? Sign up before April 1st via the link in show notes. All right, let's get to the episode. The Gut Show is back. I'm so excited for this season and really pumped to kick the season off with today's episode. We are going to go deeper into this topic of self-sabotage and how actions that you may be taking in the spiral of working against yourself may actually be holding you back when it comes to IBS management, getting control of your symptoms, even reaching other goals, whether that be health or career-wise or family, whatever it may be. These spirals of self-sabotage, shame, guilt, and how you treat yourself can really impact what outcomes you get out of your life, but also where you end up. And they kind of send you literally in a spiral where you're running in circles versus moving forward. So in this episode, we're going to cover a little bit more about what self-sabotage actually is, how self-sabotage shows up in those with IBS specifically. This can also relate to any chronic health issue that you're having, or really anything else that you have going on in your life that requires your time, your focus, your energy, and your management. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to actually get out of these self-sabotage cycles and how to work with yourself so that you can actually move forward and see the results that you're wanting to see. My goal for this episode is not to put more shame on you for the actions that you're taking, but to help you maybe put some words to what you've experienced and provide a little bit of clarity in what might be going on and how to really get kind of control of it or kind of take the reins in that space. So don't feel like this is me slapping you on the hand. Everyone experiences this in their own way. This is meant to be a tool. As a quick disclaimer before we get into the episode, I am a dietitian, but I'm not your personal dietitian. And anything that we talk about in this episode is purely educational and not meant to be direct individualized care for you or even a supplement or a replacement for the diagnosis and treatment plan that your health providers have you on. So let's get right into it. First, what is self-sabotage? So self-sabotage means getting in the way of your own success or your own progress or working against yourself. So think about it as truly kind of cutting yourself down, getting in the way of yourself, working against yourself. So again, you're not taking those steps forward, but instead you're either taking a step forward, taking a step back, or kind of rotating in circles. Many times self-sabotage can also look like self-harm. harm, but it doesn't always involve causing true harm to yourself. And however you want to think about self-harm, whatever, you can think about it, because this could be considered self-harm in some ways, just depending on your definition and what you believe or think. But when it comes to physical harm, emotional harm, abuse towards yourself, this isn't always what self-sabotage looks like. Sometimes it can actually look a little bit more sneaky, and it can look like, doing the things that don't work for your body or align with your goals, or maybe even not taking action towards your goals. So it can be the inaction that is actually considered what we call self-sabotage. So when we're thinking about, where this comes from, it's typically rooted in a disconnect to your body and a disconnect to your goals. So rarely is self-sabotage always this kind of conscious decision, right? We're not typically saying, I'm going to choose to work against myself and hold myself back. We may be consciously making the choices that we're making, but we're not consciously saying, I want to hold myself back or work against myself. What we're typically doing is responding to these thoughts and these feelings and these emotions that we're having because of this disconnect or bad kind of relationship with ourselves and our bodies specifically. And I say body, especially when we're thinking about IBS and the gut and symptoms and all of that. So with the disconnect to your body, what can typically lead you to that disconnect includes rumination. Rumination is where we have these ongoing thoughts that kind of put you into kind of a place of inaction, or almost like you're paralyzed in the thought itself. So what rumination could look like is waking up in the morning and thinking, okay, I have a big meeting today, what is going to happen with my gut? The next thought, well, what if my gut, flares right before my meeting? The next thought, if that happens, what am I going to do? I'm going to be so embarrassed in front of my colleagues. What if I lose my job? The next thought, I'm never going to succeed in life. It doesn't even matter. Like there's nothing I can do. This is always holding me back. The next thought is, well, there's no point in trying. The thoughts go on and on and on. And what's happening is that small kind of fear, concern, feeling, whatever it may be that started gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and becomes so big that you're stuck, kind of paralyzed, where it's like, okay, I'm in a panic because of these perceived threats in front of me, but I'm also in a state of inaction because now I'm kind of crippled by all of these thoughts that have been building up. And for IBS, because we know that, stress can impact the gut and lead to flares, typically when someone's in a state of rumination, as those thoughts get bigger, their gut's also responding to that. And so that stress, the cramping, the pain, the discomfort in the gut gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so that initial what if, maybe there were no symptoms present when that what if statement even came up. By the time that you get through, all of those thoughts and it grows so large, then maybe you are having symptoms, and that then goes back to say, well, I was right. And then that rumination continues, right? So that process and that state can really disconnect you from your body, because like I mentioned, instead of being internal and like focused here, the thought comes here, like by your side or kind of in your brain. And it almost like a tumor we can think of, right? It's just growing, 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 growing. And so instead of being focused internally into yourself, now your focus has shifted to this growing thought pattern, right? So you're fully taken away from yourself because now you're controlled by this thought pattern and you're focused on this thought pattern. Another thing that can disconnect you from your body, not just rumination, but threat thoughts. So threat thoughts are the perceived kind of worst outcome. And this can lead to rumination. It can happen during rumination. But with threat thoughts, it's not this spiraling chain of thoughts and panic. It's one thought. And so a threat thought could be, as an example, you wake up and you have a meeting that day, and the threat thought is just, oh no, I have a meeting. Last time I had a meeting, I had to run to the bathroom and I was late and I was really overwhelmed. What if that happens this time? I don't want that to happen. And what if? So there's that threat thought. So it may not spiral into this huge kind of rumination process and spiral, but what it can do is, again, like rumination, sort of paralyze you and lead you to make choices based on that threat versus based on what you know you need. So what do I mean by that? You will typically try to survive in any case that you can, right? Your body, your brain especially, is always going into survival mode, but your body does that too. Whenever we're under stress, our body makes adjustments to kind of accommodate that stress, but also put us in a state of survival. That's why our digestive system slows and some processes are turned off in the body, while the brain and the muscles and the heart are given a little extra priority so that they can do what they need to in that state of perceived, stress or threat that's going on that we need to respond to. Your brain does the same thing. Whenever you have a threat thought, its first kind of reaction is, how do we survive? And this is not something that you'll consciously understand or even notice most of the time. It's typically a subconscious kind of reaction that happens. And so in this example that I gave, where the threat thought is, what if I have symptoms that flare before my meeting? What can come out of that is, okay, we need to survive. Well, if I don't eat until my meeting is over, maybe there will be no food there. So maybe my gut won't react. And so then you skip breakfast, maybe delay any snacks, skip lunch in order to try to avoid symptoms. For those who experience diarrhea, maybe it's that, well, if I can stop my gut completely and be on top of this proactively by taking maybe a few Imodium, then that will keep me from having diarrhea before this meeting. So threat thoughts lead to survival actions. Now, survival actions are not always a bad thing, but they disconnect you from your body, because instead of tuning in to say, okay, what does my body actually need today? What does it look like to take care of my body? What does it look like to nourish my body? You're instead making actions to just survive the moment. And often those survival tactics lead to this self-sabotage cycle that we're going to get into versus truly self-care. So you might delay, a flare that would have happened before the meeting by skipping a meal or taking a few Imodium. But then, maybe after the meeting is over, you're exhausted, you're fatigued, you have more symptoms, your gut was gurgling and in pain throughout the entire meeting because you didn't eat. Now you're constipated for days. There are these repercussions to that survival tactic that comes into play. Now, something to know about threat thoughts, and often rumination as well, is that these are not thoughts that come out of nowhere. They're not something typically that you just make up. Typically, these are going to come from past experiences, and they can show up a lot like almost trauma responses, where what you have experienced in the past is now influencing what you expect to happen in the future. Now, they may grow. So periods of rumination especially can make the initial threat thought grow. So you may never have, had an accident whenever you were out of the house, but if you've had a lot of urgency, or you've had kind of explosive diarrhea at home, or you've noticed like cramping and sensations and you've had to run to the bathroom when you're out of the house, then you may start to fear having an accident, but because of those past behaviors, not just completely out of nowhere. So that's really important to understand, that these things can develop over time based on your past. So rumination can disconnect you from your body. Threat thoughts can disconnect you from your body. And another thing that can is unhelpful input from others. And I want to make sure I say this, because this is something that can often lead to these self-sabotage cycles that you may not fully recognize by the time you're in the cycle or kind of the spiral, right? You're at the bottom of the pit, and as you look up, it's hard to remember, okay, who pushed you into the pit to begin with, which is where this unhelpful input from others comes into play. Whenever someone is either giving advice to you or sharing maybe their experiences online, or maybe it is a healthcare provider that's explaining possible outcomes to you, whenever someone is putting input into you about what could happen or what is harmful or why you have symptoms that you do, maybe they make you feel like it really is your fault, which just leaves you feeling discouraged. That is unhelpful. So an example of this would be, let's say you follow someone on social media and they're sharing a story about how they were in a meeting and they had to run out of their meeting because of diarrhea, and they had to run to the bathroom and it was a terrible experience. because you, let's say, haven't even had that experience, now you heard that story and now you're having this disconnect, and you're having that threat thought. Another example would be someone saying, oh, the worst thing that you can have for your gut is hot tea, which I don't think anyone's saying. But if someone said that and they were really, excited about it, and they somehow convinced you that that was true, you may stop drinking tea or make changing your patterns and behaviors based on that input, even though that's not necessarily what you've experienced in your body. We see this often with FODMAPs, where you may hear, and this could be from your doctor, to say, hey, you need to avoid FODMAPs. And what may actually be true in your body is that your symptoms may not even be related to food. Maybe you weren't even eating FODMAPs, so there's no way those could have caused your symptoms. But now, because you got that input, instead of connecting to your body first to see if this is right for you, if this is connected for you, now you're avoiding these foods long term because of that input from others. So all of these things can disconnect you from your own body, which leaves you kind of separated. And when we're thinking about self-sabotage and working against yourself, it starts with separation, because whenever you are fully intimately connected with someone, it's really hard to put them down, to kind of cut them down at the knees, right? To be mean to them, to be harmful towards them. You're not likely to do that when you're intimately connected well, right? There are some scenarios where it's not true. But with yourself, if you're really intimately connected with yourself, it's hard to work against yourself because there's more awareness built in, and also maybe some self-care and self-compassion involved, where it's a lot harder to work against yourself because you may notice that a little faster. But when you've become disconnected from yourself and your body and that awareness that you're having, that you could have, then it's more likely that you could start developing these self-sabotage habits. All right, so now we know that self-sabotage may be the result of being disconnected from your body. Let's start to talk about what self-sabotage actually looks like and how this impacts those with IBS. So one way that self-sabotage can impact those with IBS and how we manage IBS is that self-sabotage can cause you to engage in behaviors that exacerbate your symptoms. For example, many people with IBS know that certain foods trigger their symptoms, yet they continue to eat or drink those food items, even though they know it'll make them feel worse. An example of this could be maybe a meal at a fast food restaurant, like a greasy burger, right, with fries. If you know that every time you go to that fast food restaurant and you eat that burger with fries, or you go to that ice cream place and you get a big bowl of ice cream, or let's say you go to Starbucks and get that, loaded coffee drink. If you know that every time you do that, you have a flare, but you're continuing to eat those foods, that can be a form of self-sabotage. Now, remember, you have a choice in anything you do. You have autonomy in anything you do. So engaging in self-sabotage doesn't necessarily mean that you're morally, incorrect, or that you're less than those who are not engaging in these behaviors. It just means that you are, right? It is what it is. If you know that it triggers symptoms, you're engaging in it, then you are continuing the self-sabotage cycle and engaging in self-sabotage behaviors. For some, they may not fully put the two together. Again, this is where it may not be fully conscious, but they're doing it as a result of maybe a trigger for that action. And this is where the cycle of self-sabotage can be perpetuated. So whenever we're thinking about being disconnected from the body, when you have, let's say, symptoms one morning, we'll use the example of going to work and having that meeting. You had the thought, you were concerned, maybe you skipped breakfast, and then during the meeting, you still had cramping, you still had to go to the bathroom, you still had symptoms. Then your brain can trigger, instead of going, okay, what's wrong? How do I take care of myself and being connected? Because you're already disconnected, your brain then is going to trigger, see, it doesn't even matter what I do. My body is against me. I don't deserve anything and who cares, right? It doesn't even matter anymore. I might as well just eat whatever I want because I tried to avoid this and it didn't matter. And so this is what I'm going to do. So that could be subconsciously happening. So on your way home from work, maybe you go grab that burger and fries and the ice cream, and then you take it home and, and eat it as fast as you can. And then you have symptoms all night that lead to symptoms the next morning. And then the cycle just continues over and over and over again. This type of self-sabotage can make it really difficult to control IBS symptoms because it typically leaves someone in a cycle of a flare-up and then frustration and then behaviors that either might help or not, and then a flare-up again, and this kind of consistent, like literally working against yourself, keeping yourself in a flare-up cycle. So we know that this is rooted in that disconnect. It's often rooted in this mentality of, well, it doesn't even matter, so why even try? But that can often actually be rooted in poor guidance and poor treatment. Yes, that means it's not your fault, right? If you have not been given guidance from your healthcare providers on how to truly prevent your symptoms, how to get on top of your symptoms, what to do for your gut, what to do for your body, it's very easy to be left feeling like it doesn't matter what you do, so why even try? And it can leave you feeling like, well, if I have symptoms, nothing's working anyways. And so what the opposite should look like is clear guidance about what you can do, what your expectations should be about what you do, how to actually get on top of your symptoms when they happen and care for that versus only focus on trying to prevent them. And then what to do whenever you do have that flare to avoid beating yourself up and being frustrated. So guidance should fit all of the holes that we see in this cycle and not just focus on one piece, which may just be on dealing with the symptoms after they happen, or just focused on prevention and even just one little facet of prevention. So if you're stuck in that form of self-sabotage, start to think back to when you met with your providers. Did you get good guidance? Were you given more treatment options? Were you given that holistic guidance in filling in those gaps? And if you notice that, oh no, those gaps have not been filled and I haven't gotten that, then that could be where you want to start to break that cycle. So another way that self-sabotage can impact IBS and get in the way of IBS management is when self-care is neglected. So people with IBS and you listening to this podcast know that you need exercise, healthy diet, enough sleep, stress management, all of these things to manage your symptoms and to have better gut health, right? You've heard it over and over again. Eat healthier, move your body, stay hydrated, manage your stress. You know these things, right? They've been told to you. And if you don't know those things, then this is likely not the self-sabotage cycle that you're in. But even though you may know those things, often people neglect these things, either due to feelings of anxiety that kind of leaves them a little bit crippled, maybe those rumination thoughts, depression, or even low self-esteem and the absence of self-compassion. This can make it really difficult to maintain a healthy lifestyle and healthy habits and routines that are crucial for managing IBS. So this type of self-sabotage, and it's kind of like the inaction. Often what comes with the inaction of, okay, I know I need to do these things, is we typically do the opposite, where instead of exercising, moving the body, either you over-exercise to punish the body or just never move at all, right? Instead of sleeping, it's staying up late and, kind of working against yourself and procrastinating, when you would go to sleep. Instead of a healthy diet, you eat things again that you know are triggering your symptoms and that just aren't really making you feel well. Maybe you're eating nothing, or maybe you're eating way past fullness and kind of gorging on foods to as a form of kind of that punishment or trying to self-regulate. This is often rooted in your self-confidence and your self-image after dealing with symptoms for a long period of time. When you live with something, especially a chronic health condition that impacts your daily life, when you feel gaslit by providers and others in your life that maybe you've told about your symptoms or what you're experiencing, and you experience body dysmorphia because the way you feel in your body is different than the way you look or you even think you look on the outside, this can all lead to low self-confidence and poor self-image. This is, again, typically the result of already being disconnected. It can also be the thing that disconnects you, but it's you looking at yourself and making the choice based on what you've experienced and maybe what others have told you that this person, this body, this human being that you are is not worth the self-care that is recommended to you, or that even may intuitively feel that you need. If this is the self-sabotage cycle that you're finding yourself in, this can be a delicate place because there are often going to be maybe hate type of thoughts and language that's spoken to yourself. And so it may be best to work with a mental health professional that you really connect with, that you vibe with, that has experience in this area to help you talk through this and work through this. I love the practice of self-compassion here, and you can get there's a book called Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. That's a great place to start, but it's also really helpful to have someone guide you and start those conversations with you and help you kind of work through maybe that language that's developed and that disconnect. Because this is often where we are going to see maybe forms of self-harm that we want to deal with cautiously and thoughtfully so that you can have the most success coming out of. Another way that self-sabotage shows up in those with IBS and can impact the way that you manage symptoms is by causing you to avoid seeking out professional help. So if you even heard me say, maybe it would be helpful to work with a mental health professional to help you guide you through this, and your first thought is absolutely not, there's zero point in even doing that. Nobody has ever helped me and nobody ever will, right? This hesitancy that you may be experiencing right now, or many people with IBS have, is due to the fear of being judged, the fear of being told that their symptoms are all in their head, right? Being gaslit like they were before, or maybe even being told that, they're at fault, or they're too high maintenance, or it's, they just need to like manage their stress, right? Given those blanket recommendations. Many people who are living with IBS have been through those experiences over and over and over again. So you've likely experienced that yourself, or maybe you've heard many people talk about it on the internet. Maybe you're hearing me even talk about it right now. And it leaves you in this space of there's no point in getting help because no one is going to help me. No one is going to listen to me. And it's going to be a waste of my time, and it's going to be a waste of my money. Because again, your past experiences have validated that. The problem with this is that not seeking help can make it difficult to get an accurate diagnosis, or even the proper diagnosis if this isn't IBS or if it's not what was originally told to you. It can make it difficult to get appropriate treatment and even stay up to date on new treatment options that may be available for you, and can delay symptom relief and recovery. So it can leave you feeling stuck and actually being stuck. Now, this form of self-sabotage is unique because it's not as much of, okay, I'm working against myself on a daily basis, and it's going to be something that's a little bit harder to identify of like, oh, it's this thought that's leading to this action. Like typically this is going to be something that maybe a healthcare provider has kind of forced you into a bit. And getting out of this cycle is going to be to challenge that and find a new provider. And that may fail a couple of times because there are some not so great providers out there. But when you do feel connected to a provider, whether that be a dietitian like myself online, or a therapist locally that you heard give a talk, or let's say you find a website and there's a gastroenterologist that their background or even their culture or like their ethnicity, whatever it may be, that you feel somewhat connected to, that's always a great place to start because that may lead you into a better experience than you had before, as well as really, preparing for those appointments so that you're not only going to the appointment and having, hope and expectation to hopefully get out of the cycle, but you're going prepared, armed, and ready to advocate for yourself to help you break through the cycle. I truly believe, especially when we're thinking about things like self-compassion, that it can take massive action to get unstuck. And that action is not always going to feel the most comfortable or the most intuitive. So I hope me talking through some of these cycles and these different scenarios gives you some ideas of where you can begin and what action that you can start with. Energy follows momentum. So think about one step that you could take today, and that's going to help create that energy that's going to help you move forward. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And if you want to share some of your takeaways or feedback from the episode, you can send it through Instagram at erinjudge.rd or join our Facebook community, the Gut Community, in order to, share with others who are part of this community and listen to the show as well. All of that can be found in show notes if you're interested. Thank you for tuning in. I can't wait to dig into our next episode, which is all about anxiety. So join me next week as we dive into this hot topic and for the rest of the season as we cover some semi-controversial and less talked about topics surrounding IBS. I'll see you there. Did you like today's episode and wish that you could connect to others with IBS and learn even more about how to feel more empowered in your body with IBS? If that is you, I invite you to join us for the IBS Warrior Summit. This is a month-long webinar series in April for those with IBS to come together, to learn, to connect, and to build awareness. You will leave the summit with resources in your hand to feel more empowered to take charge of your healthcare and your IBS management plan. Your complimentary ticket to the summit includes access to all live workshops and all recordings for up to a full year. So don't miss out. Sign up today via the link in show notes. I'll see you there in April.